and welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Lauren and I will be guiding you through a gentle yoga practice. This is an updated sequence to a sequence I've done before that I've labeled my anti-sitting sequence that a student requested, just to kind of counter all of the things that get tight or just need a little bit of movement after a lot of sitting. So that's what we're going to do today. So that's mostly through the chest and shoulders, opening through the chest and shoulders. A few movements for our hips, especially our hip flexors, a little bit in the hamstrings and a little bit in the lower back. So kind of everywhere. So really the intention for the sequence is that at the end of it, you should just feel really good, kind of loose, a little more fluid, and that's sort of my intention for you. So hopefully we can get you there. So for today's practice, you are going to need 2 blocks, or at least 2 things that you can sort of apply some weight when we're in low lunges. Even if you have a chair sort of next by or next to you at the top of your mat, but something that you can place some weight into, even if they're not necessarily yoga blocks. And then I always like to have a folded up towel to place under the back of my head when I'm on my back. And we are going to start on our backs. So whether you have something under your head, that's entirely up to you. It's always optional. But we are going to start on our backs. Okay, so whenever we start on our backs, you're always welcome to allow your legs to be lengthened and extended. If something that you know about yourself is that you do a lot of sitting, your hip flexors might be tight, and if your hip flexors are tight when you're here with your legs extended, it's going to pull your pelvis forward and it's going to create a little bit of an arch and sort of this back bend in your lower back, which is not really all that ideal. So if you know that you have tight hip flexors, or if you know you sit a lot or do a lot of running, walking, or bike riding, things where we use the hip flexors a lot, your best bet is probably to start with your knees bent and your feet flat. This is usually where I start, especially at the beginning of the practice. And you might be practicing in the evening, but I woke up not that long ago, so I'm a little tight, I'm a little stiff, I need some time to warm up, so I'm going to have my knees bent, feet flat, but you're always, again, welcome to have your legs extended. And then just placing the arms alongside your body with the palms up. And just allowing yourself to settle here. There will be points in the practice where I'll ask you to be working and engaging a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. But right now, we're looking for some softness. If the entire yoga practice, if we were just moving our body, and if we were just focusing on the poses, it would really be more of a gymnastics class or an aerobics class, and that's not what yoga is, right? So we have to incorporate these other elements, and so here, just finding some softness and some stillness, positioning your body in a way that's just really comfortable, where you can just let go. Maybe you let your eyes softly close. And as you allow your body to relax, maybe you have to consciously let your muscles and body relax. Finding any spaces that feel like they are still gripping or engaging. Maybe call them out. Think to yourself, hey, lower back, hey, chest, hey, shoulders, hey, wrists, whatever it is. Relax, it's okay. And the more you can let your body relax, the more you can let this layer of your being soften, the easier it is to turn even deeper. Again, really making this a yoga practice and not just a fitness class, right? So turning inward. And one way to do that, especially at the beginning of the practice, is to turn your attention to your breath. And one of my favorite pranayamas, breathing techniques, is belly breathing. So let's come into that here. So to start, let's bring our left hand to the chest, by the heart, by the collarbones, and the right hand by the low belly, below the belly button. So again, left hand by the chest, by the heart, by the collarbones, the right hand at the low belly.
And allow your elbows to rest on the ground. So if your hands are off-centered, if your hand is more to your shoulder than your chest, that's okay. We want to relax again. Remember, relaxing through the body. And then just notice your breath. With your hands, feel your breath beneath you. Imagine that your breath is a tangible item, something you could hold in your hands, something you could see, something you could grasp. And can you feel it beneath your hands? And then noticing as you're breathing naturally, notice which hand is feeling the breath. So you might feel the breath underneath your left hand. You might feel the breath underneath your right hand. You might feel it under both. You might feel it under neither. There's truly not a right or wrong answer anytime you're making an observation. Just notice your own breathing pattern. And know that you're welcome to stay here. Know that at any point in the practice, you're welcome to do what makes sense for you, whether that's when I'm cueing a specific pose, or maybe even here with this breath work. You are welcome to stay just as you are. Or you can shift into belly breathing. So that shift means manipulating your breath so that you feel your breath in your right hand at the low belly. So taking deeper, fuller, longer breaths, sending your breath down to the low belly by the right hand. And then as you exhale, slowly releasing all the way from the low belly. So as you inhale, you're breathing in through the nose or the mouth. Allow the breath to travel down the throat, past the chest, past the ribs, past the belly button, down to the low belly. And then as you exhale, let the low belly fall. Let it drop down towards the earth, releasing that breath. So continue with these belly breaths, allowing the low belly to rise and fall with every breath cycle, filling your lungs to their capacity. Fill your lungs with breath. These are belly breaths, and let's take 3 more just like this. And at the end of that 3rd belly breath, just return back to your natural breath, back to your organic and effortless breath. And then you can allow your arms to rest again alongside your body with your palms facing up. And just take a moment to notice how you feel. So much of a yoga practice is these observations. And so just noticing how you feel. Now keeping your attention inward and present. If it feels right for you in this moment, you're welcome to silently set an intention for your practice, asking yourself what brought you to your mat. Think of a positive word or phrase, something that you can repeat a few times to allow it to settle into your heart. You can start to bring some movement into your body. Moving a little bit, just taking some time to Move in a way that feels good as we hear the sirens fading in the background. So I live on a busy street, so this is not going to be uncommon to hear those sorts of sounds. Traffic, sirens, what have you. So if you're ever hearing something like that and you're watching one of my videos and you're wondering, is it on the video or is it in real life by you? It could very well be in the video. There's not much I can do. Okay, so we're gonna come back with the knees bent, feet flat. And if you've got the room, let your arms come out truly in opposite direction. So from up overhead, you look like the letter T, palms facing up. Now the intention here is it'll softly, in a very subtle way, open your chest and shoulders. Because if we allow the palms to be down and the arms to be close in, we're just kind of sort of reinforcing that, allowing the chest and shoulders to shorten. So we want to open and expand as often as possible. Okay, but we're going to focus on our lower back, so let the knees sway from side to side. And we'll just let them rock and sway. We'll stay here for a while. So the intention here, again, is your lower back. So you're twisting through your spine. Notice that your heart is facing the ceiling. But as you twist, your belly button is pointing over to the right and over to the left, which means that your spine is twisting. And we're focusing a little bit more on the lower sections of the spine. We're also massaging the lower back and the glutes into the ground. And so just again, noticing how this feels. So I mentioned observing and making these observations. And so even thinking about the sirens or any other sort of distracting sounds or distractions, even if it's not a sound necessarily, that might come up for you, whether it's because it's on my end or if it's on your end, noticing those things. So you notice the siren, you might notice your neighbor playing music or cars going by or whatever it is. Again, they don't have to be sounds, they can be thoughts that come into your mind. You maybe start to think about the weekend or whatever. And so you observe that your mind goes there, you observe that those things are present, but you allow yourself to be still centered and still grounded and not necessarily distracted. You notice that those things are happening. We're not in denial, but you don't let them affect you. Whether there is a sound going on or whether there is, again, something on your mind, don't let that distract you from your practice. So making those observations about what's going around is great, but we want to avoid allowing them to really take us out of the moment. Okay, let's let the legs go to each side one more time. Okay, and then we'll return back to the center. So again, that was more so for the lower back. Now we're going to get into the hamstrings, the backs of the thighs. So this is another space that gets really tight from a lot of sitting. I know my hamstrings feel very different these days. Okay, much tighter these days, I should say. Okay, so again, knees bent, feet flat. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, hug your right thigh in towards your belly. Hold onto the back of the thigh instead of the top of the shin. Now, if this isn't really accessible for you, you can always grab a towel or a strap or something to wrap around the back of your thigh. It doesn't have to be your hands. That's not a requirement here, but what we do want is the thigh into the belly. So as best as you can draw it in, we do want the thigh into the belly. So for me in my body, my thigh and my ribs or my belly kind of are making contact, and I'm going to make sure that they continue to do that throughout the movement, because then we can get into the hamstrings much deeper. We're going to relax the shoulders, relax the chest. Remember, that's another space we want to soften, so be conscious about that, be mindful. And then inhale, reach your right foot up for the ceiling, but you're going to keep your right thigh in towards your belly. Again, in my body, they are still touching. I did not allow it to come away. And then exhale, bend at the right knee, let the heel come back towards the back of the thigh. There we go. Inhale, reach the right foot up. Exhale, bend the right knee. We're going to stay here with the breath. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, bend. Now continue at your own pace. And this is a movement that I often teach in group classes. I think I taught it twice yesterday alone. And so I often find that students, again, allow the thigh to come away from the belly, and that's not wrong. It's just not getting into these muscles as deeply as I would like for you. So I can't see you, but my guess is that you're allowing your thigh to come away from your belly a little bit. So keep hugging that thigh in. It doesn't have to be a lot of effort in the arms. Your arms should not be getting tired. They should not be feeling fatigued. But you should be feeling quite a bit through the back of your right leg, starting probably at the knee all the way back to your glutes, to your sit bone. And you're gonna feel your right hamstrings lengthen and stretch. And because our hamstrings are so tight, and because we're hugging the thigh in, it's gonna be a little deeper. Okay, we'll do this just a few more times, getting into the hamstrings, maybe 2 or 3 more times, just like this. Softening the shoulders, softening the chest. Now the next time your leg lengthens up towards the sky, we're gonna hold it here, okay? You're gonna keep hugging your thigh in. We're gonna point and flex the foot. So point and flex that right foot. These movements of our feet and ankles that we're about to do, these are great in the summer when we're wearing not the most supportive shoes, flip-flops and sandals and things like that. So, okay. Now after pointing and flexing, now we do some ankle circles. So do some ankle circles, really large circles. These movements are also really good when we're in winter. Now reverse the direction of the circle. In winter, when we're wearing boots and we're wearing really restrictive footwear. So if you are like me and live in Chicago, you go between these two very different seasons, and your body is affected by that. Okay, so now we've done the foot and ankle circles. Now let's spread the toes wide. You're gonna reach your toes away from each other, trying to create as much space between the toes as possible. And then crunch the toes in tightly like you're making a fist with your foot. Spread your toes wide, crunch them in tight, do 1 or 2 more of each. Notice that you're feeling this through the foot itself. This is the movement I really like to do. Again, when we're wearing like flip-flops, because your toes kind of have to grip, but they get tight doing that, and it's a whole thing. Okay, so now you're gonna relax your foot. You're gonna keep your leg long, but release your arms. Inhale, really reach your right heel up towards the ceiling. Exhale, slowly lower. Push your heel forward towards the wall in front of you as you lower that leg. And then once that leg comes down onto the ground, lengthen both legs and just take a beat. Take a moment to, again, observe. These observations are so important. They remind us to slow down and be very mindful. And so can you slow down? Can you pause? Can you make these observations about how your right side and your left side feel different from one another? And you make this observation, you can feel it, maybe all the way up from the hip down to the toes, but you withhold any judgments. So instead of saying my right side is open, which is good, and my left side is tight, which is bad, we just think the right side feels open and the left side not so much, and we leave it there. We don't have to label good and bad. That's something we all, I think, need to work on. Okay, take a deep breath here. All right, so we'll again bend the knees, bring the feet flat onto the ground. All right, take a deep breath in. As you breathe out, hug the left thigh in towards your belly. Hold on to the back of the thigh as opposed to the top of the shin. So your hands are actually on your hamstrings, or the strap or the towel or whatever it is, but your hands are actually on your hamstrings. So this is where you're more or less gonna feel that sensation. You're gonna hug that thigh in. So again, for me, my thigh touched my ribs. Yours might not, and that's okay. But wherever it is here, I want you to keep it here as you start to move. So inhale, reach the left foot up towards the sky. Ooh, my left side's a lot tighter. Exhale, bend the left knee, heel comes to the back of the thigh. Inhale, lengthen that leg. Exhale, bend the knee. And so you'll notice that as you lengthen your leg, you might see it on your own body, you might see it on mine, that as you lengthen your leg does not become a straight line. That's not the intention here. I know that my yoga training often dictates strong alignment, which is usually straight lines, joints that are stacked, everything's very linear. And so oftentimes I am asking students to create straight lines and again, the stacked joints and linear lines with their body, but not here. Just because maybe you do that in certain poses or have that idea in certain poses doesn't mean it translates to every pose. Certainly you always want to be safe. That always comes first, and alignment often helps you with being safe. Here's another siren. But not here. That's not the intention, is not a straight line. Our hamstrings are so tight that to ask them to be lengthened to their fullest capacity is really, really asking arguably too much. So be gentle. I am feeling a lot on this side with my leg very deeply bent. So maybe you are too. Let's do just a few more, maybe 2 or 3 more. You can kind of notice, are you feeling the stretch more in the back of the knee, more in the thigh, more in the seat? Okay, now lengthen that leg, and we're gonna move through the foot and ankle, so point and flex. Now can you relax your chest? Can you relax your shoulders, your arms and hands? And now do some ankle circles and really large circles. Notice that you feel this through the calf and the shin. And then reverse the direction of the circle. Okay, and then bring the ankle to stillness, spread the toes wide. Really reach them away, and then crunch them in tight. Reach them away, crunch them in tight, relax your shoulders, because I noticed mine started to creep up again. A few more times with the feet here. Okay, and then you can relax your foot, but keep your leg extended up. Release your arms. Inhale, really lengthen the heel up towards the sky. Exhale, slowly lower. Push your heel away from you as you lower the leg. And then once it comes down, you can lengthen the other leg. And again, observe how you feel, but withhold the judgment. One more breath here. Okay. Take a deep breath in. As you breathe out, hug both knees in towards your chest. Now this pose is called Apanasana. Anytime you're here, you can stay here. You can just really hug your knees in. You could rock from side to side. If you do that, let your head go along for the ride, massage the back of your skull. One thing I like to do, depending on how my lower back is feeling, is either this rocking from side to side and really sort of rocking almost all the way over, or hands on the knees and trace circles with your knees like you're stirring a pot. So making really large circles and then reversing. Of course, anything you do, make sure to go in the opposite direction. And then when you're ready, we're going to come up to a comfortable seat. You can rock through to the center or you can roll to the side and push yourself up. But come on up to a comfortable seat. And I'm going to take a seat on my block. Elevating the hips is never a bad idea. Especially in a cross-legged position. Okay. Okay, let's start to warm up more through the spine. So we did a little bit for the spine on our backs, but let's do even more. So lengthening up through the crown of the head, letting the shoulders relax away from the ears. Inhale as you draw your belly forward, lift your chest, lift your heart, look up. Exhale, tuck the tailbone, draw the ribs back, chin to the chest, look down. Inhale, draw the belly forward, lift the chest, lift the heart, maybe look up. Exhale, tuck the tailbone, ribs back, chin to the chest, look down. Just a few more of each like this. We're basically moving through a seated cat and cow, opening through the front and the back of the spine, front and the back of the torso. Let's do just one more of each. We don't have to be here long. Now the next time you come back to the center, we're gonna hold one of those movements a little bit longer. So we don't really need too much of a stretch in the forward bending action because a lot of us are here through the day. This was me doing the steering wheel. I don't think that really came across very clearly. So for the record, all of those was computer,
phone's steering wheel. I thought I could mime it and it would be quicker, so it wasn't. So this is a movement we do a lot. So again, coming back to that sitting, those are those times that we are sitting. So what we really need is more of this. So let's do this. So option one is to bring your fingertips down into the ground. I'm sitting on a block, so I really kind of can't reach the ground, but you could put your fingertips on the ground, push your fingertips down to sort of propel your heart up. I want you to think about lifting your heart up, not so much belly forward. I want it more to be sort of from the waist up, or more from the upper part of the torso. What I'm going to do, because I can't reach the floor, is I'm going to interlace my fingers behind me and reach my knuckles down towards the floor, squeeze my shoulder blades back, so I'm trying to create a lot of wrinkles in the space between my shoulder blades. And I'm lifting my chest and heart like there's a string pulling my heart up towards the sky. Here's another siren, something's going on today. So there's a string pulling my heart up towards the sky. I'm opening and expanding through the collarbones, and maybe if it feels good, I look up. Now, this you should feel through your chest, in again through the upper part. So if you're looking for a little bit now in the shoulders, you're gonna keep your torso as it is, but you're gonna start to lift your hands. I'll turn so you can see. You'll start to lift your hands away from the mat, farther away from the ground. But I don't want you to fold forward at all. I want you to keep your torso upright and lifted. We're gonna stay for 2 more breaths. This is Yoga Mudra. Expanding through the chest and heart. 1 more deep breath, really opening here. And then slowly release, releasing the arms. Okay. All right. Now we are going to come into tabletop. So I'm going to move my towel. I'm going to bring my blocks to the top 2 corners of the mat. I don't need them right now, but we are going to need them momentarily. All right. So we're going to start in a tabletop, in a traditional tabletop. So from tabletop, in a traditional tabletop, now here's a good example of where everything that I was mentioning before, joints are stacked, things are straight lines, things are very linear. So wrists, elbows, and shoulders are stacked, making a straight line. Knees are stacked directly under the hips. If you were to drop your head and look through your thighs, you shouldn't be able to see your feet because they disappear behind your thighs, because your shins are parallel. Again, a lot of straight lines. But what we're gonna do here is walk our hands 1 whole handprint closer to the top of the mat. Spread the fingers as wide as they'll go. Really push down through the base of the pointer finger and the webbing between the pointer finger and the thumb. Okay, now we're just gonna gently warm up a little bit more through now wrists, shoulders, hips, and knees. So inhale. Exhale into an active child's pose. Elbows will stay off the ground, arms will stay straight, but hips come back towards the heels. They may or may not touch. Inhale, shift forward to this extended tabletop. Exhale, shift back into this active child's pose. And when you come back in the child's pose, or each time that you do it, if your feet start to come a little bit closer together, the big toes start to come a little closer together, that's okay. That setup that I was describing was if we were going to stay in a really traditional tabletop, which we're kind of not. But we're just gonna move at the pace of the breath. You're gonna really think about pushing your hands into the ground. Imagine like your hands are glued onto your mat and you're firmly pushing down. And you might even kind of draw yourself forward a little bit. You'll feel a little through the wrists. Now we're gonna stay here for several moments. You're welcome to just move between these 2 poses, exactly like this. Or if you need a little bit more, inhale into this tabletop, exhale downward facing dog. And I would suggest softly bending both knees here. Inhale tabletop, exhale child's pose. Inhale tabletop, exhale down dog. Again, knees softly bent. Inhale, tabletop. Exhale, child's pose. Inhale, tabletop. Exhale, down dog. So alternating between a down dog and a child's pose. And you're always welcome to keep your knees very deeply bent in any downward facing dog.
But as we're gently starting to incorporate them, I like to think about straightening my legs a little bit more each time I enter it. Just a micro movement. Just straightening just a hair more each time. Again, waking up the hamstrings. We'll do maybe about one more round, one more of each pose. Notice what spaces feel like they're working, like they're getting fired up. And then we'll all meet in a child's pose. And it can be an active child's pose. I wanted one more, I guess. It can be an active child's pose or it can be passive. Either way, you can now bring the big toes together and you can let the arms rest and maybe the elbows bend. You might rest your forehead right on your mat or stack your hands or stack your fists and rest your forehead there. But allow your hips to really draw back towards your heels. Again, your hips may or may not touch your heels. That's okay. It really doesn't, I hate to say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter. You come into your version of child's pose, whatever that looks like. Let's take 3 deep breaths here in this child's pose. And then if your arms are extended, slowly slide your hands so they come under your shoulders. If you're resting your forehead, slowly lift your head up. Push your hands into the ground to lift your torso. And then we'll come back into tabletop. Again, back into that more traditional tabletop. Okay. Now here, we're going to need the blocks, and we're also going to be kneeling on one knee at a time. So I'm not sure, of course I'm not sure where you're practicing. You might be on like hardwood and maybe you want a pad under your knee. You're welcome to do that, but we're gonna keep the right knee where it's at. So if you wanna fold under, whatever you need to do, but right knee might need a little bit more padding. I'm gonna grab onto my blocks and step my left foot forward. Okay, so we're gonna start in this low lunge here. Now, you've got your blocks and the intention here is, unlike when we were on our backs, I do not want your thigh and your belly touching. They might be ever so slightly. Maybe your shirt is just ever so slightly brushing against your thigh, but we don't want them squeezing, hugging tight, because what is gonna happen then, what most likely will happen, is the weight of your upper body will be resting on the leg, and if it's on the leg, it's really gonna end up a lot in this knee. So it's just a safety thing. So it's not about what you are able or unable to do. Sometimes people think of blocks as like training wheels, like if you can't do a pose, you need the blocks. That's not, please don't think that way. That's not how this works. Please just use the blocks if you need the blocks. I need the blocks. You might use them at any height, but I really would prefer that your thigh and your belly are not touching here. Okay, so we're in this low lunge. You're going to push your left heel firmly into the ground. Your hamstrings actually should start to feel like they're working a little bit. You're going to push the top of your right foot, your right shin, your right knee down into the ground, like you're lifting your hips up. So here again, thinking about a string pulling you up from the ceiling, I always think like I've got 2 sort of strings at my hips. If anyone's ever gone like rock climbing, I always think like I've got this sort of like band on and I'm getting pulled up, so that I'm lifted, so that I know my muscles are working. This is not meant to be like a frumpy, sloppy. We want work, we want engagement. This should be strong and stable. Your hands are just here for a little bit of stability. You theoretically could be without your hands, but just for stability, we've got them. Now, once we've pushed down and we've lifted up, now we let the hips come forward towards the top of your mat. And you're gonna watch out so that you are still firmly pushing through the left heel and you can easily wiggle your left toes. Now I feel like I would like a little bit more weight out of my toes. So I'm gonna crawl my left foot forward just an inch or 2. And now I feel a little better. What we're hoping for is, and this is tough to see on your own body, but from a side view, that your knee and your ankle are fairly stacked, that the shin is a vertical line straight up and down. So then we can allow the hips to come forward, and you're going to feel a lot through your right hip flexor. Okay, and if you're not feeling anything, one thing that students often do is they sort of, again, come into this back bend because their hip flexors are so tight that they sort of stick their seat out and come into this back bend. You might have to think about tucking your tailbone. It's such a subtle action. I just did it. I don't even know if you could see it. But like you're really trying to point your belly button at the ceiling, not at the floor, not at your feet. Think about pointing your belly button up towards the ceiling. You should feel something through the front of your right hip flexor. You shouldn't feel it through your lower back. When I did the sort of what students tend to do, I feel this in the left side of my lower back. It doesn't feel good. So you tuck the tailbone. Again, I just did it. I don't know if you can even see it. It's fairly subtle. We're gonna lengthen this not the hamstring. We're gonna get there in a second. Hip flexor. We're gonna take 3 more deep breaths here. Keep pushing down into the ground, tucking the tailbone, lengthen the right hip flexors. 1 more deep breath. Okay, now we're gonna let the hips come back. So this is again another time where we want things to be a little linear and straight lined and everything stacked, but it's hard to see on your own body. Your right hip should be stacked over your right knee. Oftentimes students reach themselves way back. We want knee and hip stacked. The thigh, the femur, is a straight line up and down. So what that means is the left foot needs to crawl forward, usually a little farther forward than you realize. And we always want the hands under the shoulders. Again, remember your blocks are adjustable, or if you've got a chair next to you, whatever it is. So now the left leg is straight. We're pushing the left heel forward, the left toes to the sky. We want to lengthen the left leg, especially the back of the left leg, as much as possible. So imagine that you're reaching your left heel forward, but your left hip and your left sit bone back. So we don't want the hip to come forward. So one thing to think about, what direction is your belly button pointing? If your belly button, I had a teacher who would always say, imagine that your belly button was like a laser pointer. Where would it be pointing? So if your laser pointer would be pointing over to the right now, we want to square it up. Your laser pointer belly button should be pointing sort of right to the center of the top of your mat. So draw the left hip back, but the left heel forward. You should feel it through the back of that left leg. Let's take 3 breaths. This is Ardha Hanumanasana, half splits. Okay, and now we're going to move at the pace of our breath. So I like to walk my hands forward a little bit and just kind of keep them sort of in the center between these 2 poses. And I slide my left heel back just a little. Inhale, bend the left knee, let the hips come forward, feel it through the hip flexor, the front of the right hip. Exhale, draw the hips back, reach the left toes to the sky, feel it in the left hamstrings, the back of the left leg. We'll move with the breath just a few times. Inhale, shift forward, feel it in the hip flexors. Exhale, shift back, feel it in the hamstrings. Now these 2 muscle groups are 2 of the spaces that are really tight from sitting. I would argue probably the tightest. I don't know, I'd have to think about it. but these are really tight. Again, these are spaces that are not tight just from sitting, but they're tight if you do a lot of walking, running, bike riding, things that are where you're picking your feet up off the ground. These are the muscles that do that work. And so that's why I say they're really tight on most people, because if you walk or sit, which I'm sure you do, they're probably tight. Okay, let's do 1 more of each. And again, we make these observations about ourselves. For example, I've noticed my hamstrings have gotten tight within the last few months. And so I notice, but it doesn't bother me. I don't judge myself. I don't judge my body. I don't judge my practice. This is what my body has been doing, and I should start to make some adjustments. And that's it. Okay, so we'll come back to tabletop, and you can let your hips sway side to side. I always think this feels really good after all this forward and back motion. I think the side to side feels really nice. And then when you're ready, we'll step the right foot forward. So again, you might want to pad your left knee because your left knee will be resting on the ground for a while. All right, so we step the foot forward and we want to make sure it comes forward enough. What I usually notice is that my fingernails are usually in line with like the center of my foot. It's not necessarily that my fingernails are in line with my toenails. It's usually a little bit farther forward, if that helps. It might not. But what you're gonna do is push your right heel down. Your hamstrings might start to feel like they're working on that side. That's okay. You're gonna push the top of the left foot, the left shin, the left knee down, like again, a string is pulling your pelvis or your hips up towards the ceiling. Again, I always think like you've got like a harness on or like a belt that's being pulled up towards the sky. And then you come forward. And then when you come forward, you should very easily be able to wiggle your right toes. So if you can't, you might wanna walk your right foot forward just an inch or so. So we're getting into now the left hip flexors. You may have heard of a muscle called your psoas. If you've seen it written but maybe don't know how to pronounce it, it has a silent P in front of it. So it's P-S-O-A-S. Yeah. So your psoas is one of your hip flexors. So we're stretching the hip flexors, we're stretching the psoas. But we're not going to be doing that if we're sticking our backside out. If we're in this sort of back bendy shape, we're not going to feel it in the hip flexors. Again, I feel it when I do this, I feel it in my right side of my lower back, which is not the intention. So if that's where you're feeling it, think about scooping your low belly. Again, I'm doing it now. You can probably barely tell, but it's like you're trying to get your belly button to point up towards the ceiling. Like you're drawing your ribs back in towards your belly. And again, lengthening the hip flexors. Keep pushing down into the ground. Again, torso and thigh aren't resting. Again, maybe ever so slightly touching. Yeah, but not resting. We don't want the weight of the body in the right knee. Let's stay for another breath. All right, and then we're gonna shift the hips back. So, again, this is a little tough to see on your own body. But the hope is that the left hip stacks over the left knee, that the left thigh, the left femur is a vertical line if you were to look from the side or from straight ahead. So it's a little tough to see, but kind of position yourself, feel it out. Bring the hands back under the shoulders. Slide the right foot forward a little bit, reach the right toes to the sky. Now think about where your belly button is pointing. Is your belly button pointing over to the left? If that's the case, you're probably not getting as deep of a stretch as you could be. So a lot of these things, it's not because they're wrong. It's not because it's gonna hurt you. A lot of the things that I say are safety cues, but for example, this one is not. This is just, you just won't feel a stretch. It just really won't be as beneficial as it could be. So, and I would imagine you are doing this class in this video for some benefits. So let's get some. So you're gonna reach your right heel forward, right toes to the sky, the right side of the seat, the right hip, the right sitting bone, whatever you need to think of it, it goes back. What helps me is I like to imagine I'm being pulled in two opposite directions, so this space feels really long. I keep reaching the right toes to the sky, lifting the chest, the spine should be in neutral. We're avoiding all that slouching. Again, this is what we do when we sit. This is our anti-sitting sequence. So lift your chest, broaden through the collarbones, take a deep breath. And then we're gonna move with our breath. So I always like to walk my blocks forward just a little bit. Slide the right foot back just a little bit, an inch or two, and then bend the right knee. So you can easily come into that low lunge, feel it in the left hip flexor, left psoas, and then shift it back, half splits, Ardha Hanumanasana, right toes to the sky. Inhale, shift forward, feel it in the hip flexor. This is a low runner's lunge. Exhale, half splits, feel it in the right hamstrings. And just a few more with your breath. Noticing these feelings, noticing that maybe you are tight here, but avoiding the judgment of, oh, that means it means X, Y, and Z about my body. I won't even give you any ideas. But so you're tight here.
join the club. So it's not a big deal. You just notice these things, and then maybe you change some habits. Maybe you do this stretch more often. Whatever it is. But yoga is not a time to be judgmental towards yourself. That's really, we're really striving for the opposite. So let's do one more of each of these. Okay. And then when you're ready, we'll come back into that tabletop. Again, I always like some side-to-side action after that. Maybe you want to roll out your wrists or just come onto your forearms. I know sometimes that's a lot if we're not used to it. But also, I know we're saying this is sort of the anti-sitting sequence, but wrists get really tight from being on computers and holding phones. So it's not a bad idea. You know, sometimes you get like this and you're like, oh, my wrists. You have to sort of train your wrists. Your wrists need that sort of endurance and that stretch just like any other space, just like your hamstrings. Okay. All right, from here we're going to come to a seat again. So you can set your blocks off to the side. For this pose, I would, you don't need to sit on anything. Like I said, oftentimes when we're sitting, like when you're sitting in a cross-legged position, to be sitting on a block. But here, just right on the floor is good. And lengthen your legs out along your mat. All right, so we're gonna keep the left leg as it is, pushing through the heel, toes to the sky. We're gonna feel the length in the back of the leg, but we're also protecting the knee. Bend the right knee, place the bottom of the right foot flat onto the ground. Now it can stay to the inside of the right thigh, to the inside of the left thigh, or it can cross over and come to the outside. If you're taking that option, press the base of the right big toe. Just like I was asking you to ground the base of the pointer finger, same principle, ground the base of the big toe down into the ground. And the right sit bone down. They tend to do this sort of teeter-totter seesaw thing. One down and then the other and keep them there. Keep reaching the left toes to the sky. Bring your right hand behind you like it's reaching for the back right corner of your mat, but use that to lift up, lengthen your spine. Inhale, reach your left fingertips up towards the sky. Exhale as you take a twist over the right. Your left arm might wrap around your thigh and you might hug it in, or you might bring your tricep to your quad and use that as leverage to twist a little deeper. Now you're going to turn your heart over to the right. You might turn at your neck to look over your right shoulder towards the wall behind you. But keep flexing that left foot, left toes to the sky, grounding the base of the right big toe. Reach up with the crown of the head, but soften the shoulders. Let's take 3 breaths here. One more breath. And then release your head and neck, shoulders and arms, upper back, mid back, and then the legs. Once you lengthen both legs, maybe you sort of pedal them out, roll them around, give yourself some movement. Not everything we do has to be a yoga pose. Sometimes we can just move if it feels good. That's what this is all about again. Okay, so now we're gonna keep the right leg straight, bend the left knee. There's only 2 sides. You'd think that we had 4, the way I can't keep track of them sometimes. Okay, so you're gonna keep your right leg extended, right toes to the sky, left knee bends. It absolutely could stay here, or it might come to the outside of the thigh, but if you do that, base of the big toe down on the ground, as well as the left sit bone down. Make sure they're both firmly down. And again, right toes to the sky, protect the right knee. Left hand comes behind you like you're reaching for the back left corner of your mat. You're gonna use those fingertips into the ground to sit up tall. Inhale, reach the right fingertips up towards the sky. Exhale as you twist over to the left. Right arm might wrap around the left leg. Tricep might come to quad, and you might hook it to use it as leverage to twist. So the left arm you're using as leverage to sit up tall, because a slouched twist is not a very beneficial twist. This isn't gonna do much for you. So you want to sit up, you want to twist and rotate. You might turn at your neck to look over your left shoulder towards the wall behind you. Keep flexing the right foot, grounding the base of the left big toe. Ground your seat, Reach up with the crown of the head. 3 deep breaths. One more deep breath. And then unwind from the top. Release the head and neck, shoulders and arms, upper back, mid back, low back, then the legs. And again, maybe just move however feels good. Shoulder rows, some of those cat and cows, whatever you want. Roll some stuff out. Everything that we've done is for the intention so that it feels good. So that at the end of this, you're like, ah. That's my hope. Okay, so now we're gonna come into a restorative pose where you will need blocks or even pillows will do. We're gonna come to fish pose. If that sounds familiar to you, then you know where we're going. But you'll need something. It could honestly just be some pillows. This is gonna be, we're gonna come back to opening through the chest and shoulders. We've spent most of the practice focusing on sort of the spine, the lower back, and the hips and hip flexors and hamstrings. But now let's come back to this opening through the chest and the shoulders. So I mentioned that when we were on our backs, I said to reach the arms out so you look like a capital T to open all this. Here's when we're gonna get to do that a little deeper. Also, I mentioned that we do a lot of this, right? So we're gonna counter that, not just through the chest and shoulders, but through the spine. So fish pose. So you're gonna take, if you've got blocks, you're gonna take them so they look like a capital T. The one that is going to be for your head, the one that's farther away from you, closer to the back of your mat, is gonna be one height higher. So they're not on the same height, notice that. If you're just using, you could use a bolster, you could use pillows, again, you could roll up a blanket, whatever you need, but something that's gonna elevate you. The firmer it is, the deeper the stretch. So I've got these cork blocks, so if you can grab a more dense pillow or blanket, that might be a little better. All right, so we're gonna start taking a seat in front of it with the knees bent, feet flat. What I usually like to do is I reach my fingers out, I let my thumb touch me, and I let the pinky finger touch the block. And that's how I know that it's generally enough distance. We don't want it right up against you. And then you lower down. I like to come onto my forearms. I just make sure it's not wonky, it's not crooked, it's centered, it's right where I want it, and then placing this one down under the head. So this first block is mostly supporting like your mid back and your ribs. My shoulder blades are sort of hugging the top of the block. And then the second block is placed more so in the back of my head so that when I open my eyes and I just look straight up, I'm really looking straight up. You don't want to be looking towards your thighs because if you can, I don't know if you can see me right now, but now my chin is in towards my chest and I'm overextending through the back of the head. What also happens is people do the opposite. Their chin is reaching towards the sky and they're looking at the wall behind them. That's too much in the front. So we want it to be even so that the tip of your nose, or again, if you're opening your eyes, you're looking more or less sort of straight up overhead. Okay, and then we let the arms again come out in opposite directions. So now that we've lifted the torso, the stretch is going to be deeper. Now, like always, you can keep your knees bent and your feet flat, or you can lengthen your legs here. And it's going to be a little deeper if you choose that. So this is called fish pose, Matsyendrasana. And this is the supported version. And I might have used the word restorative already, but either way, whether it's passive, supported, restorative, all of those mostly mean the same, meaning that you're not working here. That you can allow your eyelids to feel heavy, so your eyes softly close. Your whole body can relax. All of your muscles, all of your joints. You are physically supported by the props beneath you so that your muscles, your joints, your whole body can be passive. It can be relaxed. We allow gravity to do all of the work. The rest of the practice was focused on engaging
even if the movements were gentle and accessible, we still had to concentrate, we still had to focus. But now, it's about softening, relaxing, and releasing. So we'll stay for several more moments, just allowing the body to release, to relax, to let go. We'll stay here for 3 more deep breaths. Slowly start to bring soft movements into your body by letting your head rock from side to side. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Move arms and legs. So when we release out of a passive restorative pose, especially if you've been there for a long time, we need to be thoughtful about it because the hope is that your muscles are really relaxed. So asking them to work sort of requires some thought behind it, right? You're sort of swinging the pendulum from super relaxed to engaging. So you're gonna bend your knees and you've got 2 options of how to release off this pose. One option is to push your arms into the ground and peel up off the blocks or whatever props you're using and come up to a seat. But if your blocks aren't all that high, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll over onto my side, all the way off the blocks in a tucked fetal position, resting my ear and my arm, and I just pause here on my side. Whether you're up in a seat or on your side, just pause for a few moments. And then you can remove the blocks. I don't even like to get up to do it. I'm relaxed. I want to stay relaxed. Move the blocks and come down onto your back. Maybe you grab something for under your head. And just coming back down into your back and noticing how your spine feels different. So I mentioned that the intention with that pose was to open through the front of the chest and shoulders, but it was also a back bend. And so there's a lot of spaces, anywhere really from the hips up, including maybe even your hip flexors, all the way up, might be feeling some stuff, and that's okay. Give yourself another breath. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, hug your knees into your chest. And just like before, you can rock side to side. I like to go really, really slow, like almost all the way over, and really massage through my back. But You might stay still, you might come to a happy baby, you might trace those circles, you might do some of those movements with your feet, but we want to do something that just feels good and is fairly relaxing. Because in a few moments we're going to come into Shavasana, so we don't want to get ourselves too energetically hyped up right before Shavasana, right? That's a little counterintuitive, so slow and gentle, thinking about what's to come, so we can easily get into that soft space in Shavasana. Okay. I wish I could join you in Shavasana, but I'm going to come up to a seat. I've got to look at the clock, otherwise I will totally lose track of time. So you stay on your back, you come into your version of Shavasana, whatever that looks like. Just like at the beginning of the practice, that might mean that your knees are bent, feet are flat. That might mean that your legs are extended. Now your hip flexors are nice and warmed up. So when you lengthen your legs, you shouldn't feel like your lower back is lifting up off the ground too much. So however you set yourself up, props, no props, legs long, knees bent, the intention is just to be somewhere that feels really good. And this is one of the things I really like about having a home practice or doing videos, doing yoga videos at home online, is that you sort of have to listen to what feels good for you, because you can't look around, what are other people doing? What are other people looking like? What should I do? What feels good for you? You can do whatever you need. But the intention with Shavasana shouldn't get lost. The intention is to find a comfortable, neutral position. So we're not looking for something that, again, hypes you up, brings you energy, nothing that creates a deep stretch. We want our body in such a neutral, comfortable position so that it's not our focus anymore. The body is no longer the focus. It was for a while, but now we want to focus on softening, letting go, shifting the focus from the material and the superficial to something a lot less tangible and a lot deeper, a lot more internal. And so maybe that means as we're here for the next few minutes, you focus on your breath. Or maybe your intention. And you'll find, most likely, if you're like most people, your mind might wander. And your mind might get distracted. And that's all right, just bring it back. Whatever your focus is, breath, mantra, intention, bring it back there without judgment. And stay mindful.
soft and subtle movements throughout your body, rocking your head side to side, running your thumbs over the rest of your fingers as you wiggle your toes. Roll your wrists and ankles. Move your arms and legs. You can reach your arms overhead, stretching as if you just woke up from a long nap. Fingertips and toes in opposite directions. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, hug your knees in towards your chest. And slowly roll over onto either side in a tucked fetal position, resting your ear on your arm to support your head and neck. Keeping your eyes closed and using the strength of both arms, push down into the ground and come up to a comfortable seat. Take a moment here to thank yourself for making it to your mat today, and maybe reflect on your intention. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. And may the thoughts, words, and actions of my life contribute in some way to the happiness and freedom for all. Now slowly join your hands together in front of your heart in Anjali Mudra, with the palms together and the thumbs softly resting on the collarbones. To seal our practice, we'll chant the sound of Om one time. Om is the oldest and most sacred mantra. It's said to exist in all living things and therefore unites all living things together. Again, we'll chant the sound of Om one time. Let's start with a deep and clearing breath. Inhale for Om. The light or the good in me acknowledges, respects, and bows to the light or the good in you. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me again. My name is Lauren, and this was my updated version of my anti-sitting gentle yoga sequence, and I hope that you feel all loose and open. That was my intention, and I hope you can carry that with you through the day, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.